The first lie my husband ever told me was not about another woman. It was about a suitcase. The night before our flight to Miami, he kissed my forehead, wished me goodnight, and waited until he thought I was asleep. I watched through barely opened eyes as he quietly unzipped my suitcase, slipped something inside, and zipped it shut again, smiling to himself in the dark. I almost asked what he was doing. Instead, I pretended to stay asleep. That decision saved my life. By the end of this story, you will understand exactly why I let my husband believe he had already won. My name is Grace Bennett, 33 years old, and until that morning, I thought I was married to the kind of man every woman dreams about. Nathan owned one of Chicago's fastest-growing construction supply companies, remembered every employee's birthday, and made everyone feel important. I trusted him with my money, my future, my heart, and looking back, that was exactly how he wanted it. I had been a forensic accountant before we married, but Nathan gently convinced me to leave that career behind, saying we had enough, that I should travel with him and enjoy life instead. What I did not realize was that every paycheck I gave up made me a little more dependent on him. By midnight, I still could not sleep, the image of him opening my suitcase replaying endlessly in my head. I slipped out of bed and carried the suitcase into the hallway, unzipping it slowly in the moonlight. Everything looked normal, until I noticed the side compartment was not zipped the way I always left it. Inside was a gray leather handbag that was not mine, holding a thick manila envelope. Good wives respect privacy, I told myself. Then I remembered that good husbands do not secretly hide handbags in their wives' luggage. Inside were property deeds, wire transfer confirmations, and dozens of photographs. The first showed Nathan entering a luxury apartment downtown. The next showed him holding hands with a woman outside a hotel, and it was Brooke, his executive assistant of 3 years, the one who called him Mr. Bennett in public. Apparently, she called him something else in private. Every transfer led to the same company, Blue Harbor Consulting, an address I recognized immediately. It was the exact warehouse Nathan had claimed burned down the year before. The accident that supposedly cost his company nearly $2 million. The same night I sat beside him while he cried into a glass of whiskey and whispered that we were ruined. I remembered selling jewelry my own grandmother had left me to help him recover. The warehouse had not ruined us. It had made them rich, and I had paid for part of their fortune with my grandmother's rings. I sat on that hallway floor for what felt like hours, every memory from the last 5 years suddenly looking different. I should have confronted him right then. Instead, the accountant inside me took over completely. Evidence first, emotions later. I photographed every document with my phone, every signature, every account number, then placed everything back exactly as I had found it almost. As I reached to close the handbag, a baggage claim receipt slipped onto the floor, and it was not in my name. It was in Brooke's. Unless the handbag was never meant to stay in my suitcase at all, unless it was meant to disappear quietly before we ever landed in Miami. That was the exact moment I stopped thinking like a wife and started thinking like someone who was being carefully, deliberately set up. I did not sleep another minute that night. If Nathan had hidden that handbag in my suitcase, either he wanted me to unknowingly carry it somewhere, or he wanted someone else to find it on me and assume the worst. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I was not going to confront him, not yet. People who spend years lying always prepare answers for questions. They never prepare for silence. Nathan acted exactly like the loving husband everyone admired that morning, carrying my suitcase downstairs, kissing my cheek, joking about how much I had packed. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I wanted him to believe he had already won. At the airport, Brooke was waiting near the entrance. And the moment Nathan saw her, something shifted between them. Small, almost invisible, a tiny smile, a glance held 1 second too long, 2 people carefully pretending not to know each other well, which meant they knew each other far better than they wanted anyone to see. At the counter, Nathan stepped away to take a call, and Brooke set her carry-on beside mine while digging through her purse for her passport. This was the moment, one chance, no second attempt. I bent down as though fixing a wheel, opened the side pocket, removed the gray handbag, and slipped it into Brooke's carry-on beneath a folded blazer, zipping it shut in under 4 seconds. Nobody was looking at me. I picked up my suitcase, my hands completely steady. For the first time in hours, I was not afraid anymore. Security was crowded that morning. Nathan passed through the scanner first, clear. I went next, also clear. Then Brooke's bag hit the X-ray belt, and the operator frowned, leaned closer to his monitor, and pressed a button. The conveyor stopped. "Would you step over here, please?" he called to her. Nathan turned so fast his boarding pass slipped out of his hand. My stomach tightened, not from fear, but from something closer to certainty. An officer placed Brooke's suitcase on the inspection table, unzipped it, folded back her clothes, and reached into the bottom compartment. Slowly, he pulled out the gray handbag. Nathan went completely pale, terrified. "Is this yours?" the officer asked her. "I don't think so," she said, staring at it like she had never seen it in her life. "You don't think so?" No, he opened it anyway. The thick envelope slid onto the table, photographs spilling across the counter in front of a small crowd of strangers. Wire transfers, property contracts, bank statements, every secret Nathan had buried now sitting under bright fluorescent airport lights. One photograph landed face up, Nathan kissing Brooke outside a hotel entrance. Someone nearby whispered, "Isn't that him?" Nathan lunged forward. "Those are confidential company files," he shouted. "Sir, step back," the officer said firmly, holding up one hand. "They belong to me," Nathan insisted. Silence. The officer looked from Nathan to Brooke, then finally to me. "You just said they weren't yours," he told her. She could not answer. Nathan could not either. For the first time since I had met him, the man who always had a perfect explanation for everything had none at all. We were eventually allowed to leave, since nothing inside the bag itself was technically illegal, but the damage was already done. Whispers followed us all the way to our gate. Nobody spoke on the flight. Nathan stared out the window, Brooke cried quietly into a tissue, and I simply watched the clouds pass beneath us, feeling strangely calm. Sometimes silence hurts more than any argument ever could. That evening he knocked on my hotel room door, exhausted, and dropped to his knees the moment he stepped inside. "I made mistakes," he said. "Mistakes?" I asked softly. "You lied for years, you stole, you cheated, and then you hid evidence in my own suitcase." He looked up, confused. "The handbag," I said simply. "You found it," he whispered, his face losing every trace of color. "I did," I told him, "and I also moved it." For several seconds he could not even breathe. "You switched the bags," he finally managed. "Yes," I said, watching his shoulders collapse as he finally understood that everything at security had not been some cruel accident. It had simply been the direct consequence of his own carefully laid plan, turned back against him. When we returned to Chicago, I filed for divorce the very next morning, but I was not finished. I sent copies of every photograph and document to my attorney, an independent forensic auditor, and 2 of Nathan's own business partners. Within weeks, the truth exploded far beyond anything I had expected. Blue Harbor Consulting was not just a fake company invented to explain a fictional fire. It was a fully functioning shell corporation used to quietly siphon millions of dollars away from investors over several years. The affair, which had felt like the center of my entire world only days earlier, suddenly became the smallest scandal compared to the fraud buried underneath it. Federal investigators opened a formal inquiry within the month. Nathan's board removed him as CEO. Longtime clients canceled contracts one after another, and Brooke disappeared before the investigation was even fully underway. Nathan called me dozens of times over the following weeks. I never once answered. Months later, our divorce became official in a quiet courtroom that smelled faintly of old carpet. The judge looked directly at me and said, "Mrs. Bennett, you are free." For the first time in years, that single word actually meant something real. Something I could feel settle into my chest like a held breath finally released. People still ask me sometimes whether I planned all of it as revenge from the very beginning. I always give the same honest answer. No. I simply refuse to keep carrying the weight of someone else's lies on my own back for even one more day. I think about that hallway floor sometimes, sitting there in the dark with my grandmother's memory in my hands and evidence of my marriage collapsing spread out in front of me. And I no longer feel the devastation I expected to feel looking back, only something steadier than that. Because sometimes justice does not begin in a courtroom, and it does not begin with shouting or tears either. Sometimes it begins the moment you quietly decide not to be the person everyone around you expected you to remain.